The StarCraft II WCS Global Finals is sponsored in part by Intel, T-Mobile, NVIDIA, and Republic of Gamers.
Also ich glaube, meine Eltern meinten, dass ich irgendwie mit 4 oder 5 Jahren schon angefangen habe, irgendwie Computer zu spielen. Also ganz alte Konsolen auf Nintendo und solche Sachen. Ich war einfach immer irgendwie recht interessiert in Gaming, schon von ganz, ganz jung an. Größtenteils habe ich, glaube ich, mit meinem Bruder gespielt und so einfach immer mein Ziel, dass ich gewinnen wollte. Generell denke ich, bin ich einfach ziemlich zielstrebig. Wenn ich mir ein Ziel setze, dann versuche ich einfach alles, das zu erreichen und ehrgeizig, denke ich. Für mich war das ja alles neu, die ganze E-Sport-Szene damals. Wenn ich mich recht erinnere, war das erste Spiel, das ich geschaut habe, Soccer gegen den Muslim auf Metalopolis. Und es war schon irgendwie ziemlich überraschend für mich, was man in dem Spiel alles machen kann. Ich war mit meinem Abi fertig in 2012, wusste ja nicht so ganz genau, was ich machen will. Will ich studieren, will ich irgendwo Ausbildung machen? Und dann habe ich eben einfach StarCraft gespielt. Irgendwann war ich dann auf dem Level, wo ich einmal so kleinere Cups gewonnen habe. Und irgendwann kam dann eben ein Team auf mich zu. So hat es angefangen. In 2014 habe ich die EPS eigentlich ziemlich dominiert. 3-mal ins Finale kommen, konnte 2-mal gewinnen. Und das hat mir damals extrem geholfen. Gerade in den ersten 2 Jahren oder so habe ich immer mir mega viel Druck gemacht, weil ich eben wusste, dass es wirklich gut war. Wenn man so viel trainiert, dann ist es immer ziemlich schade, wenn man dann underperformt.
Tobias ist beim Spiel angespannt, aber er ist sehr fokussiert auf das, was er macht, und er will das dann auch durchziehen. Also ich hätte ihm das früher nie zugetraut. Also ich bewundere ihn da wirklich, auch die Interviews, und also ich bin immer ganz fasziniert von ihm, wie er das macht.
Meine Eltern waren schon von Anfang an immer, wenn ich ein gutes Event hatte, haben mich angerufen, oder Tante und so weiter, oder Cousins sind mittlerweile ziemlich dabei auch und schauen jedes Match an und sind eben einfach wirklich happy, wenn ich irgendwie eine gute Leistung bringe. Mein stolzester Moment war auf jeden Fall der Sieg in Tours vom WCS Spring Final, weil es eben einfach ein Riesenturnier war. Auch im Finale gegen Nerdshow war super, super knapp und irgendwie konnte ich dann mit ein bisschen Glück gewinnen. Und ich weiß auch nicht, ich war einfach mega happy in dem Moment und ich konnte eigentlich keinen klaren Gedanken fassen.
Gerade bei der WCS, als mein Bruder gespielt hat und im Finale war, da saßen wir eben alle auf dem Sofa, haben mit Herzklopfen zugeschaut und wir waren alle ziemlich angespannt.
Wir haben uns unwahrscheinlich gefreut, dass er das geschafft hat, wo er jetzt die ganze Zeit darauf hinarbeitet. Wenn ich dann sehe, wie er schnell arbeiten muss, wie anstrengend es ist, wenn er dann zwischen den Bildschirmen hin und her schaltet. Das ist, also ich habe echt Respekt vor ihm, wie er das kann.
Ich habe schon immer Videospiele gemacht und von daher ist es eigentlich ein Traumjob für mich. Und generell, ich meine, ich kenne so viele Leute aus verschiedenen Ländern mittlerweile. Also ich trainiere fast den ganzen Tag und alles, was ich mache, ist irgendwie nur dazu da, um besser StarCraft zu spielen. StarCraft 2 ist mittlerweile eigentlich mein ganzes Leben.
Not to do heel.
ShoWTimE, there we go, from Urtisheim in Germany. It was lovely to meet his family. We traveled over there. And now he finds himself on the biggest stage. I know they're at home watching right now as well, Artosis. A big moment when you know that, well, throughout the years, your family have always been watching and following you, and that you finally got to where you wanted to be.
It's a really touching story because he actually has like parents that are really supportive and loving and like watch all this stuff. Some of these other stories that we've seen, their parents are, you know, very kind of like, ooh, I'm not sure if you should be doing this.
It depends though. Usually it's at first. When you start coming home with $30,000 check, usually they're pretty enthusiastic.
Yeah,
that is a funny subtext.
They become
Todd,
okay
you're
with
right.
that.
They're like, at first I didn't like it, but after he bought me the family car, I was like...
It's like, I guess it's okay for now.
I met his dad, and his dad knew more about individual results of ShoWTimE completely. He's like, Yeah, last week in the Go for StarCraft, he lost versus a laser 3-2, and then he was calling out the maps, and I was, oh, you do actually follow everything.
He's a smart investor.
Very, very interested in everything that ShoWTimE is doing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And to also see that he comes from like this little town in the hills of Germany, whereas, we're so used to StarCraft pro gamers, it's like, I come from Seoul. It's one of the biggest cities in the world, right? So it's like,
yeah, he's not Korean.
It's just kind of a random. Yeah, isn't that weird? Isn't that just so weird, Jeff? That he's
You're
not
like,
Korean.
Oh, it's so cute. He comes
we're
from
at
a little
BlizzCon,
village.
like,
It's
wow.
not Seoul, Korea.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's very cool to get this other feel from a lot of the other videos we've seen.
Yeah, Todd, and ShoWTimE has grown over the years to start to rival some of the big Protoss names in Europe over the years. If you look at the players we've had, Hazuob, Sase, Naniwa, ShoWTimE now is at that level. He's at that peak in the European scene.
Yeah, it took him some time, but I mentioned this many times before. Like, if you're persistent, if you keep on training, eventually you will reach your full potential. And it really feels like with this guy, he's already pretty much got there. Like, he's shown us so many good things. Winning over in Tours was just so impressive. The finals against Nurture, I think like everybody really enjoyed those games. So I always look forward a lot to his games. But now I want to talk very briefly about like some facts from Deer. We haven't really seen him much, right, since 2013, which was his best year by far. He won the WCS season, he won the global finals, and then he made top 8 at BlizzCon, losing to
My boy Jaedong.
Perfect. Oh, wow, this wasn't scripted at all.
Like, he didn't lose the Control. Control.
I'm not my boy, Dan. I am the boy.
So since 2013, we haven't seen him as much, but now he started being really consistent again. I think he got 2 top 4 in a row over in Korea. I
think it was actually 3.
Yeah, it was,
like,
2 this year, 1 last year, too.
Right? Why do I need this for? I got Arthur's.
Just cut it up, Todd, and throw it away.
The computer over there.
So basically, Deer is back now, and he's playing really, really well. So it's one of those guys that I think is consistently underestimated as well. It's like you got all these proto superstars like, yes, he's the most handsome and the best, but people forget about Deer very easily. He's actually extremely good.
Yeah. All right, well, that will be the first match of Group C. There's 2 other players in there, and that will complete the full group of Group C.
The lone wolf who changed everything. Bjorn enters the tournament as a clear favourite to win the championship. His recent GSL victory propelled him to the very top of the StarCraft scene, and he's looked upon by many as the current #1 in the world. 2016 has been an improved year for Violet as he qualified for the global finals for the first time, managing to finally reach the tournament every player strives for. After failing to qualify for last year's global finals, Deer is back. This year, Deer accomplished back-to-back GSL semi-finals as he continues to search for his old championship winning form. The WCS Spring Champion ShoWTimE, who has had the best year of his career, completes Group C. With a recent drop in form, advancing from this group will be no easy feat.
So those are the 4 in Group C. Not going to be easy. Well, it's not possible for all of them to go through. Only 2 of them can. But which one is it going to be? We'll find out shortly. I know it's not the best there. But we've got to be looking at this group as a whole. As Bjorn is the favourite, no doubt. We are very similar to how we looked at Dark yesterday when he entered Group A. We are looking at Bjorn as the heavy favourite to advance in first place from this group.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the PVT matchup. It's been tough, kind of across the board. I mean, I say tough, like Protoss, we have our little moments where we can complain a bit, but Bjorn is just, he is electrifying in all 3 matchups, so obviously it's a little bit heavy-handed in this case with the Protoss, but I feel like he's got to be your favorite, and we were talking about this yesterday. If not Dark, a couple of your favorites for the entire tournament are like Bjorn and TY, probably.
Yeah.
The only 2 other Terrans in the entire tournament, but still. Yeah, I mean, does anyone else have another opinion on that? Like, is there another person that's a more favorite, you think, than Bjorn?
To be honest, I'd put Bjorn not really as the overall favorite. Like, I think he's still super good, but I don't know that he's going to bring anything like revolutionary new.
Really?
Like, I definitely think he'll get out of the group. I think that he's going to be a force. But maybe he'll win the whole thing.
Does he need to bring out anything?
Well, that's the question, right? Like, does he need to bring something new? Because we saw so many of his games recently. He's streaming a lot. He's playing every online cup. The thing is, there's so much information on Deer. I mean, on Bjorn, and you can just kind of look and be like, okay, I already know what you're going to do. Now, can you stop that? That's where the question comes with him. Is his micro so good and his multitasking so good that he just wins? Or do some of these guys with more hidden strategies, are they going to be able to...
That's a good point.
Do you think there is going to be a challenge to beyond just being the first place outright?
I mean, for the tournament, yes. For the group,
Yeah, for
I
the
think
group.
he's favored. But I could see Deer giving him a run for his money if Deer
Okay.
beats ShoWTimE.
I think anytime you win a tournament, you got a target on your back from
Yeah.
there. Same for Neeb, you know. Maybe Koreans respected him before, but now there's definitely more of one of those targets on his back.
All right, well, here is ShoWTimE, of course. Gonna have a hard time in this group, no doubt. There's 3 very good players in there alongside with him, but there is a chance here for him, Todd. He is a champion of the 2016 WCS circuit system. You believe in him. Rotty's already told me backstage that he's going to beat Dia now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
If Roddy told you that, he probably got money on it as well. So it's yeah, ShoWTimE is somebody that you can never underestimate. Like when he plays his absolute best, this guy can beat anybody. So it's always the question of, you know, how well is he doing right now? In the recent tournaments, he's not necessarily been that impressive. Like, you know, he lost his first match, I think, against ShoWTimE in Sharkcraft Kings. Over in Kiev, he had like a decent run, but, you know, usually from ShoWTimE, you would expect a grand finals or a victory. So obviously, this is the most important tournament of the year by far, so he must have practiced really hard for this. So I'm very excited here to see what he does.
So a lot of people always talk about how ShoWTimE is definitely the best Protoss from the Europe scene. I mean, how do we rank him when we bring in the Neebs, the Snoots, and everyone else? Is he still top 3, top 2? Where is he
Top
overall?
5, right?
Yeah, sure.
Top 5?
I would definitely give him top 5 foreigner slot. No question.
I think
Nurchio
so, yeah.
and Neeb are neck and neck for like the absolute top.
Yeah, I
think
would put Snoot right up there too, even though he did go out first. Like I always consider
Like
him one of the
roughly
very,
top
very
4
best
then
foreigners.
with those guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe, yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Dian. I mean, we already talked about him before. 3 in a row top 4s, very consistent at that level. But he is missing a championship quality, some kind of star, some push to get to that trophy.
Yeah, like he's been very consistent for the past year plus, getting deep and everything, but he hasn't, at no point were we looking at him as, oh, you're probably going to win this tournament.
Yeah.
Right? So he's just been like amongst the best, not the best. And which is funny because like back as Todd was talking about when he won, you know, the GSL and then goes right into the WCS tournament and wins that. It's like he was just easily the best Protoss in the world. I think he's started to tighten up his play even more in the last GSL season, though. And, like, I was actually kind of counting on him to beat Bjorn, and then Bjorn is like, oh, no, I'm actually God mode at Micro. But Deer's execution is going to be just fantastic in this series. That's, like, something that always stands out to me, that even if he gets the bad end of, like, a build order or something like that, he's just like, well, I'm just so good at the game, I'm going to win anyways. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see from him out of this tournament.
Deer against non-Korean Protosses, he's 12-1. And his only loss ever was to Naniwa, probably when he was at his best. So it's pretty scary to look at this and tell yourself like that he's going to go up against another one of those guys. But at the same time, it feels like, you know, times have changed and ShoWTimE.
I feel like those are 2015 stats, though, right? Like it hasn't been this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, it's fairly old, but you always have to, you know, kind of respect, right?
you're right.
The old games that were played, even though they were not even necessarily on the same expansion. So he does well against non-Korean Protosses for sure, but now he goes up against a ShoWTimE who, in this new age, it feels like he should be able to compete with anybody. So it must make for a competitive series.
You did bring up the point how, you know, ShoWTimE's been bouncing with, you know, Neeb and trading series and growing that way, but likewise you can say the same for Dia, who's playing with stats and zests and pushing himself forward. Where do you see this series going then?
The Korean scene's gotten a lot more insular in the last year, like a lot less traveling abroad and playing out and more playing amongst themselves. So they've had hyper competition. It's been just like a lion's den over there. So I do hear myself constantly, I don't want to use the word overrating foreigners, but it is close to that if you want to be that cynical, and being like, well, Deer, I mean, this guy's a past like gigantic champion, one of the world-class Protosses, and we're like, ShoWTimE should be even favored here. And I think there's definitely an element of let's check that back a little bit. But to be honest, too, yesterday did not bedazzle me that much where like a lot of these Koreans that we do revere as like the absolute best, that it was not the BlizzCon of years past where we're like kind of angry at the foreigners, where we're like, that was a really piss-poor effort. This looks terrible. Yesterday, we're like, that was competitive and that was good. And we even saw True go out. I mean, it is possible. And I think today, I think ShoWTimE is of the caliber to maybe send Deer into the bottom of this group.
And I think that, you know, a contributing factor to that would be just the amount of experience that, you know, the ShoWTimes and the Neebs have picked up in 2016. They've played so many tournaments, so many stages, so many top 8s, so many top 4s. There aren't the same nerves that they've had in the previous years. They're used to playing on this now.
Definitely. It's not like, you know, they've competed amongst each other like forever and now come and play against these guys that are like unbeatable. And guys like ShoWTimE, they're meticulous with everything. They're build orders. Like I mentioned, like ShoWTimE, you watch him play, he's just smooth, like from start to finish. He just walls off, everything's clean. He barely ever makes a mistake. And there might be actually, I wonder if this series, if there's going to be a feeling out process, kind of like we saw yesterday when Snoop played against Stats the first game, where maybe they would play a little bit slow and go into the later stages of the game, in which case, I would say maybe I would even favor ShoWTimE to take map number 1 if that was to happen.
All right, thank you very much, Todd. And in control, Artosis, last word then. Perhaps a prediction, if I squeeze it out of you, perhaps.
You say prediction.
Oh,
I say prediction.
Yikes. Yowzers.
I don't want to curse it like I'm Claris or something, but you know, it's really a hard one. You know, I think that ShoWTimE has a little bit more experience with that late game and with the more current meta because he's been playing with players like Neeb, whereas the Koreans had to catch up after Kespa Cup with this kind of disruptor style. I think I will just ever so slightly favor Deer here, just because I think his execution and his mechanics, they just won't falter. This guy has played on stage for, you know, against the best in the world so many times. But I think it is going to be a close and good match.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll be hearing more from you throughout the day. And that's us done on the couch for the pre-game segment. I hope you guys at home are excited. ShoWTimE versus Deer just around the corner.
The StarCraft 2 WCS Global Finals is sponsored in part by Intel, T-Mobile, NVIDIA, and Republic of Gamers.
It is time to kick off day 2 here for the World Championship Series Global Finals as we get into our 3rd and 4th groups. Roddy, ShoWTimE, awesome video talking about his struggles and also his it looks really buff in that as well.
I know, he's running. I felt like I was watching a trailer for a boxing movie or something. I was like, look at that guy. He's preparing for an 11-war round, but it's just ShoWTimE having a casual jog. I'm super excited for this series, Nate. I really think that the European PvP is very good. I think it's very, very good for ShoWTimE that we have kind of gone back to the Blinkstalker disruptor style that, you know, we used to play in the beginning of Legacy of the Void, and then suddenly everybody said like, no, let's make Archons and Adepts and just try to kill each other. And ShoWTimE hated that phase in PvP. He lost 0-3 against Neep, you know, the Into Extreme Masters Shanghai. We watched those games. That game on Apotheosis is one of the best PvPs of the year, but he lost it, and he was just not comfortable in that style. I think ShoWTimE is a lot better in the current meta. Now, how is Deer going to play? I mean, we saw Deer having some issues with PvP as well in Kespa Cup. I'm just excited, man. It's really, really hard to make a proper prediction here.
We've had some awesome results so far, but it is time to kick off this group in the Northwest position. Representing Team Millennium and Germany, we have ShoWTimE.
Looking incredibly good these days. I'm feeling it. Over
it
here on the right bottom side of King Sejong, we're looking at the main base of our blue Protoss, hailing from Korea. It is Deer. A man that's not unfamiliar playing in this area. Of course, had a decent run in 2013, but it was also kind of a disappointing run back then. I mean, quarterfinals, BlizzCon, a lot of people would say like, oh, that's pretty good, right? And he lost in a close series against Jaedong. But back then, Deer was pretty much the hardest player on Earth. He didn't just win GSL Season 3 in 2013, he also won the seasonal championships that we did back then in Canada. So he went back to back, and everyone's like, well, he's probably going to win BlizzCon too, and he didn't. And I'm sure that said like, that's perhaps the fire that kept on burning within him. Because for a while he kind of disappeared, right? And almost felt like he gave up, but maybe it just felt like, no, my journey ain't complete until I will actually win in California and I get my revenge for that 2013 tournament.
Yeah, he's one of those players that hasn't been quite as out there, I guess you could say. You know, I wouldn't equate it quite to something like patience, but he himself, as good as he was never the person that you were constantly hearing about, the person that had a lot of flair. Certainly not someone that had a story like Beyond, who's had an awesome rise and made it all the way here off the back of big championships. So this is that proving ground for him, not just for himself, but also for everybody else saying, you know, is Deer the player to be excited about in this tournament? Well, if you're Protoss, this match should give us some idea of what to expect moving forward for the rest of the week.
It's Super Mirror so far, double adept on both sides, Mothership Core on the way. Now once again, you know, some people like to just shade past their opponent's adept. They like to try to see if they can find some worker kills or get some good scouting information, because seeing 2 adepts is nice, but obviously you want to see what's being dropped behind it. You know, most of the time it's going to be something normal, Twilight Robo, but it could also be, you know, a turret gate for 1 base aggression. It could also be a Stargate, and these are the things that you really want to sniff out as quickly as possible. See 2 Stalkers on the way for Deer already as well. Started them a little faster than ShoWTimE, because ShoWTimE decided to drop the Nexus.
Yep, and that probe's going to be able to spot the Nexus for Deer as these adepts cross paths in the center of the map. So he sees the expansion, he knows about it. His probe is in position. Deer will start up his expansion now as the adepts for ShoWTimE come in from the left side.
Yeah, this is slightly better, I think, for Deer, because Deer didn't take an awkward route. He's going to let these adepts not finish up in the main. He's worried about he was going to shade in. The Mothership Core is kind of out of position. I don't think that Deer is aware of these 2 adepts. If I'm ShoWTimE, I think he could have gone for it there, but he doesn't.
Doesn't want to take a risk there. Those adepts shade in, cancel at the very end. Of course, you don't want to lose them to that photon overcharge, especially with the Stalkers there to cover. So at the end of the day, it's a slightly faster Nexus for ShoWTimE. He's going to move into his robotics facility a little bit quicker in his Sentry. Meanwhile, Deer...
Deer panicked. He shot at his own Nexus.
Bad time to let the nerves get the best of you, Roddy.
We got an adept skirmish over here in the middle. It's actually better for ShoWTimE, as he was able to get the first hit off, so he had 1 hit more, and he wasn't going to be able to win that second fight, but Deer is like, well, let's just trade 1 adept for 1 adept and then get home safely. So for now, everything looks very standard. That's a very fast War Prism. It always makes me wonder, you know, could we see a Dark Shrine later on? Is this just for some adept harass, or is he even going to do something else weird? Is he going to apply some pressure with his army and drop a few extra gates? There are so many ways you can play in PvP, and I would say in the current way that PvP is being played, Scouting Nade more important than ever, because there are so many awkward in-between timings, which are absolutely not all-ins. So you really have to be on the money all the time.
These adepts moving their way across. That War Prism you mentioned is done. Blink is on the way for Deer, but Deer has only just now finished up his robotics facility himself. Does get an adept inside of that base and grab a probe and be able to get a little bit more information. We'll see the Twilight Council coming in the back. With the Photon Overcharge, we'll be able to kill the adept inside of his base. But ShoWTimE, he's got the Prism on the right side. He has the adepts on the left, so maybe he tries to drop into the main, go for this, that. Not sure. There's nothing in that Prism, so showing it here doesn't do a whole lot.
I'm not sure if he would ever let this focus. I don't think he would let this finish. I would be surprised. He's actually just going to go for it. He's going to try to snipe a sentry and pick up the adepts. It's actually a very good play by ShoWTimE.
Okay, gets in, kills both sentries, and gets out.
That pickup range, Nate, we saw it yesterday a little bit in Patience versus True, and now we again see how incredibly useful it can be. That's an amazing move. That's 200 gas down the drain for Deer.
It's a pretty interesting way, I think, as well, to use a fast Prism with adepts, because usually you're thinking about going straight for those probe kills, but he kind of got his eyes on that army and went right into the sentries, grabs a probe with that drop, pulls back out. So having the Prism here, he's going to constantly be trying to keep this threat up. Of course, he'll need to be aware of that blink, which is going to finish up faster for Deer. But still, a solid start and a great way to try to get some control over the momentum of this game.
I could not agree more. It's one of these small things. It's not like a game-winning move. He's going to try to do it again, though. Will not get it done this time. Has to be careful with the War Prism. Takes a lot of damage. Gosh, Blink just not done yet for Deer. Look how incredibly close it is on the bottom of the screen. We can see that that Blink upgrade is very close to finishing up. But still, I love that move by ShoWTimE, and this makes it a lot harder for Deer to figure out. I mean, normally you use these hallucinations to scout. You want to know what's going on. And now he lost quite a bit of gas, has to remake these sentries, which also means that the soccer count could be a little bit lower, or even Disrupt Attack is going to take a lot longer, or eventually Archons as well.
And so Blink is done for Deer. He's moving into Immortals, grabbing the third Nexus. ShoWTimE will also make this move forward. His Blink is getting close. It's
maybe
not quite there.
I think maybe Deer could get a sentry there. There was one sentry that was a tiny bit exposed, and he's gonna go for it indeed. Gets it. So that's 1 for 2. He's like, anything you can do, well, I might not be able to do it better, but I'll get one.
It's been a bit of a fight over the sentries this game, as both players trying to keep them from getting assassinated, basically, by these Stalkers and these Adepts. But macroing up nonetheless. Robotics bays are going to be pretty much perfectly synced in terms of their production, so we will see that movement up to the Disruptors come in. And the third base will be done close enough as well for both of them. So after everything that's happened in the start of this game, is there a position you like more for either one of these players, or is it pretty much normalized?
I think it's very, very even. I mean, just look at all the numbers, right? Like, the work count is very close, the army supply is incredibly close, and they're both going up to Disruptors. This is one of these games where if the two armies will clash with Disruptors, anything that happened before this does not really matter, you know. Obviously, it's slightly better for ShoWTimE, but really not by a whole lot. It comes down to execution. I think it's going to be very important to eventually maybe get an Oracle so you can tag the army and try to see what you can do with Disruptors. But Nate, if you thought attacking in TVT is hard, you know, with all the tanks set up, attacking into your opponent Disruptors is almost impossible. You always need to get like a fancy flank. This War Prism is running very low on HP. But if both players control their army properly and position their units, you know, appropriately, there's a very good chance that this will go into a super long game. And when I say super long game, Nate, I am talking a fleet of Tempest, like a lot of them. Because it's just incredibly hard, if the game is that even, to make the difference in Disruptor against Disruptor. It's doable, of course, but you need to take a risk. I'm not sure if either player is willing to take that risk.
Yeah, to see if they can get into the positions like we saw in that Neeb match against Patience yesterday, where it really did come all down to those Disruptor hits, which completely swung those games.
I was talking a little bit with ShoWTimE this morning, and he's like, yeah, every time I play against Neeb, it turns into Tempest versus Tempest. He's like, because attacking Neeb, you know, in Disruptor Wars, it's almost impossible. He's just incredibly good with it, and he doesn't really make a whole lot of mistakes. And I do think if you have a lot of PvPs that go into the Tempest against Tempest thing, you start feeling more and more comfortable with it. Like, it's not, wow, actually good for his Blink. I'm not sure what Deer is doing here, not paying attention.
I think he was sending that War Prism towards the left side. It's on its way up, but definitely not keeping too much control of those Stalkers and losing them, yeah. Double Disruptor on the way for both sides. Resonating Glaives being added for Deer with +1 attack as these Adepts drop inside of the natural expansion. Pylon is going to be overcharged. Stalkers are not quite in position for ShoWTimE to try and grab these boys on the way out, though.
Yeah, Stalker count is heavily in favor of ShoWTimE. I would say if you're like 6, 7, 8 Stalkers ahead, that is enough to try to be aggressive. These Stalkers from Deer are out of position now. If I'm ShoWTimE, I already run towards the right side. I don't understand why Deer is just throwing away so many Stalkers, Nate. He has lost quite a few. I think, like, how many Stalkers have died? Like 5, 6 this game?
Yeah.
6. That's a lot. I mean, it's Blink Stalker against Blink Stalker. It's not supposed to happen.
The momentum of building that up can help just with everything in terms of getting a concave, obviously having that damage output. And Deer is going to boot up a Stargate. Also moving immediately into his +2 attack to try and keep some sort of advantage on the ground, but Stalker count is ahead by about 5 at the moment for ShoWTimE.
Yeah, they're already dropping his target while we see a Dark Shrine on the way for ShoWTimE. Like, once again, it's incredibly hard to attack when you're working with the same unit. But I think by now, ShoWTimE is going to start feeling a little confident, right? It's not just 1 or 2 Adepts, it's not just 1 or 2 Sentries. It's a little bit of everything, and that's absolutely going to add up eventually. Adepts are not incredibly good against Pylons. Photon Overcharge is going to help out here as well. A few probes will fall, and at least Deer will spot the Dark Shrine.
Yeah, these Stalkers are going to also help deal with these Adepts inside of the base. That Photon Cannon putting in a lot of work. But Deer is moving his army now towards that center position. He's being extremely careful. He's going to throw the Disruptor shot. Gets 2 of the Immortals, burning out all of their shields. And, of course, that barrier.
It's pretty crazy that he's actually this aggressive while he has lost quite a few units. He's heavily down when it comes to numbers. You know, he's up 1 Disruptor, but he's down like 12 Stalkers. Like, normally you don't want to be in the middle of the map if you're the person that's down 12 Stalkers. Of course, 2 Disruptor shots can change everything, but it's still quite a bit. I mean, this is a pretty big Protoss army from ShoWTimE.
Yeah, a lot of it is going to come down to these Disruptor hits. We have an Oracle on the way out for Deer to try and get vision with Revelation on this army. ShoWTimE's also getting a Stargate, but 2 Disruptor shots come up towards the west side of that middle base. They do miss. The ones on the right, however, do not. Clearing out one of the Immortals. And quite a few units, but a great shot back from ShoWTimE. Clears out the front. Left without his sentries anymore.
Yep, I love the Zealot counter as well on the left side. A couple of Adepts being warped in, so Deer should be able to keep that base safe. The more Disruptor shots just going back and forth. Another decent connection
for ShoWTimE here.
Let's not forget about the flank though. The Disruptors on the left side, they could change everything. Oh, if he would have moved them up a little bit, of course, there's a chance that ShoWTimE already spotted them. These Zealots actually did surprisingly well.
That charge, man, so strong. Getting on top of the probes, and another good shot. Cleans out a few of the Stalkers, burns out the Immortal Shield. shields and barrier. Now those 2 disruptors for Deer on the left side are going for that hit from behind. They're going to grab 3 stalkers, but both of them should get caught on the way out.
They were not looking for the 3 stalkers, Nate. They were looking for that disrupted jackpot on the right side, but that was just a little too far out of range. ShoWTimE perhaps anticipating a move like that from there. If you look at the units lost in this game, you can really see that ShoWTimE has just been a lot more effective. 4 disruptors fallen for there, only 1 for ShoWTimE. 16 stalkers against 8 for ShoWTimE. These are numbers that really start adding up. That disruptor shot will connect with a couple though, but I mean, ShoWTimE is going to need some magnificent hits soon.
Yep, he's going to be able to trade out 1 there, gets single one of those disruptors, throws out another one, grabs one of the stalkers. That Oracle's still sitting on top to try and, with the tag, keep track of ShoWTimE's army.
That is actually very nice. And of course, Deer is on 4 bases, so I'm not going to make the biggest deal in the whole world with, you know, a couple of stalkers dying now, because if you have 4 base economy, it's okay to bleed out some stalkers left and right. The disruptors are a lot more important. Good hit there by Deer. I really needed that one, and that's the power of the Oracle, man. Like, the army is stacked, and that just makes it so much easier for Deer to get big hits off.
Yep, he tried to send one of those disruptors to the right side for a flank, but tripped the stasis ward, freezing it in time for a good bit. So also has to be careful if he wants to stay out here to defend that when the cooldown is on.
I feel that Deer's army in the middle is so small. We'll get another decent hit off that. Though gets 2 disruptors for almost nothing, and he's setting up a massive Blink Stalker hit squad on the north side. Not sure what his plan is, if he's going to attack the 3rd base or tries to just sandwich this army.
He needs to be careful. There's another stasis ward there in the center next to that army position if he jumps on top of that for Deer.
Where
the army is tagged. And these stalkers, yeah, they're going to flank towards that northeast base now. The Mothership Core is here to help overcharge these pylons, so that should help push this back just a little bit. At the meantime, ShoWTimE's actually getting his fleet beacon and 2 more Stargates, so he wants to make that Tempest transition.
It's very important that ShoWTimE doesn't forget about his 4th base, because you need a 4th base if you want to make that many Tempests. Obviously a very expensive unit. I love the multitasking from Diaz so far, but I don't think he's finding the openings that he was looking for.
Yeah, these charge zealots are actually a great way to help push that back too, but you're right, those stalkers are threatening the 5th base location on the right side. As the zealots come up, he's just going to warp in more stalkers. He has the prism here. One thing the zealots are not going to be able to do is knock that down, but with both sides Revelation tagging each other, just trying to retreat to the position where he can play around that a little bit better. Grabs 2 stalkers on the way out.
You know what would be very deadly? There's only 1 cannon per base for Deer. I mean, ShoWTimE has been investing a lot, and not a good hit there as Deer picks up 1 more disruptor. These stalkers are all going to fall.
Clears them out on the right side. Another disruptor shot comes in. They're trading out here, though, and this 4th base being heavily threatened by Deer. Grabs 2 of the Immortals and 1 of the disruptors, however, but this army is going to be pushed back.
Yep, still War Prison play on the north side as well. Very well done by Deer. Takes out this 4th base while ShoWTimE was getting ready to transition into Tempest.
3 Tempests are about to come out for ShoWTimE. This is what he needs. Only one of them is going to be done at first, so still a little bit longer to go for the second 2, but this, he has some zealots, it looks like, going towards the center, or is the soccer push going to hit the left base?
I mean, ShoWTimE has had a Dark Shrine for the last 6-7 minutes. I don't think he has warped in a single Dark Templar. There's only a single cannon in every base of Deer, and this could really start hurting Deer in the long run.
Yeah, he's going to grab one of the Immortals in the middle. Deer starting to take some hits from these Tempests as they begin to roll out. Disruptor shot's going to trade. Picks off 2 of them with 2 of his. He's going to try to get some of these stalkers, but the disruptors on the right side for Deer are dying. ShoWTimE has a big concave on this army, and 2 disruptor shots to clear out the majority of his gateway forces left in the center. ShoWTimE now 130 to 80 supply. A big warp in from Deer of stalkers to defend that 4th base, but this is going to give ShoWTimE the opportunity to stabilize that right side, and now with 4 Tempests, he has a much better ability to zone out this army. Keep in mind, there are no more disruptors on the map for Deer.
I love that fight. Did you see that, Nate? There were disruptors on the north side, Tempest coming in from the west, and Zealots from the east. ShoWTimE was everywhere at once, and he was able to clean up that entire army. There was no way out for Deer, and Deer suddenly, his army supply is starting to look pretty sad. And of course, he doesn't have a real answer to the Tempest. I mean, if you have overwhelming amounts of, let's say, Archon, Stalkers, then sometimes you can eventually get in a good position if your army is that much bigger. But it's not, like, it's not at all. ShoWTimE is the one with the bigger army, and now also the better army because of the Tempest.
Yeah.
He does have observers as well.
3 DTs, not going to be able to make it against this. There is a disruptor that can try to throw that shot out, but they're the only ground unit, so a blink away should keep the Stalkers alive. And ShoWTimE's going to continue to press up on this 4th. It is no longer mining. Pylon gets overcharged, but the Tempest got that range, Roddy.
A couple of Stalkers are on the left side. I'm not sure if they're going to try to flank, but that Stalker count is just not high enough.
No.
They'll actually lose the battle. Maybe at best they'll get 1 Tempest, but I doubt they even get that. And a few Stalkers will fall for Deer again, while that fort base falls too, and things are starting to look very, very dicey for the Korean Protoss.
And I love the way that ShoWTimE's also kind of set up some more stasis wards to chain this along. Stalker's trying to grab just one of these Tempests. The damage output, they're having some trouble. Maybe, did they get the one? Okay, they got it. They gave all of their lives for it, but they can say they killed the Tempest.
Look at the gas bank, by the way, for ShoWTimE. He's got 1400 gas. Would be nice to see Templar Archives as well. Why not? If you have this much gas, you know, just drop the Templar Archives. Get a couple of Archons.
Bring them out. Bring them out. Bring out all the Archons, Roddy. This position is beautiful for ShoWTimE. I mean, he's just trying to move forward, not make any huge cataclysmic mistakes, but at this point in the game, you don't have to worry about the Disruptors clearing out all of your supply. Yeah, you're just going to tap out. GG, ShoWTimE takes game number 1 against Deer.
We have called this man the second coming of Hazuobs in the past, and he showed a little bit of that over here on King Sejong. Just beautiful play. It all started with that first move with the Adepts and the Prism. I thought that was really smart.
Cute.
Not something I've seen often at all. And then just very smooth transitions. On one point, it started to look like things were going well for Deer, but it was a little bit deceiving because ShoWTimE was putting a lot of money into cannons, a lot of money into Stargates, a lot of money into the Fleet Beacon. ShoWTimE was getting ready for the next phase in the game, while Deer was putting all of his eggs in one basket. So yes, he did take out the fort, and yes, he got a couple of decent trades, but I don't think that ShoWTimE was ever truly worried about this game slipping away from him.
It's something that we don't get to say very often, that a Protoss player builds an advantage with a War Prism and Adepts, and not because he killed 20 workers, but he picked off the key tech units early on that makes things like throwing out Hallucinated Phoenix to scout more difficult, and obviously saving that energy up for either Force Fields or Guardian Shield in those Stalker battles down the road. But great control as well by ShoWTimE on the Disruptor part of things. He got some pretty solid shots. I'd say Deer got pretty reasonable trades there as well, but being able to tech up the way that he did was certainly a key factor for him.
Yeah, I think once the Disruptors were out, Deer was playing pretty good, but I want to be a little critical of the way he was playing before that though, because he was just kind of late in reacting to a couple of things. He bled out a couple of Adepts for almost no reason. He took some silly fight with his Stalkers. I mean, at one point he lost 6 Stalkers, which is not the biggest deal of the world, but you're obviously not going to get an advantage, you know, if you're both working with the same amount of units. If you both work with Stalker, Disruptor, Immortal, and you lose 6-7 units, like, how on earth are you supposed to be out there on the map? How can you control the game?
Yeah, just a couple of things that added up really nicely, like having the Nexus a little bit more quickly. He had his robotics facility up. His War Prism was finishing at the same time the Robo was like, the Robo was almost done for Deer, so he didn't have the same tools available. Maybe his Blink was 20 seconds faster, but you know, it takes a long time to get that upgrade, so it wasn't going to be out in time to stop the early harass. So it really felt like ShoWTimE, he just got in control. He got in the driver's seat at the very beginning of this game, and he was like, I'm going to take it all away.
Yeah, and I said it in the beginning of the game. He has played a lot against Neep, he told me, and he has a lot of games that go into super late game, and it really showed there how comfortable he was. He wasn't like, he's like, oh man, I really think I created an advantage for myself, you know, and maybe I should try to go and end it. Maybe I should just go for it, you know, like get a +2 timing or whatever. He's like, no, just sit back, get cannons, eventually get Tempest, and, you know, just sing it out.
All right, let's see what this man can do in game number 2. He's leading 1-0, representing Germany and Millennium. He's ShoWTimE!
Over here on the right bottom side of Frozen Temple, looking at the main base of the Korean Protoss. He's down 0-1. Can he bring it back? It is Deer. Still early over here in California, Nate. Maybe Deer just needed a warm-up game.
It is 9:14 a.m. These guys got up bright and early. They've been here for a while practicing, of course. It's been a very welcoming, warm environment. These guys have everything that they need to just keep practicing and stay cool. But what a start to this series for this young man who had, you know, such a cool story. I feel, you know, that we've been able to flesh out. I really love being able to check out the Signature Series stuff. It's so awesome to see all the time, all that effort, all the people that are supporting someone on their journey to be the best at what they love to do. And he's really brought that here so far.
Absolutely, and ShoWTimE's career has just been interesting, right? Dominated in Germany for a while, like we saw in that video series. And you remember how good ShoWTimE was in Season 1 of 2015 when we went to Poitiers, had a great run, semi-finals. And on that point, everybody said, like, you know, ShoWTimE is pretty much the best Protoss in Europe. But then it took a while, and, you know, Season 2 and Season 3 really didn't go all that well, and all eyes were on Lilbao. kind of shifted away from ShoWTimE a little bit. But since the beginning of 2016, I think it's safe to say that ShoWTimE is back. He was phenomenal in tours. Recently at the WESG qualifier in Kiev, he didn't look all that great. Of course, it is hard to be always consistent, but that was mostly one matchup. That was Protoss against Terran, and well, ShoWTimE doesn't have to worry about any Terrans in this group.
Yep.
The first Terran he could meet is in the playoffs, and I mean, let's worry about that once he actually gets there, right?
Yeah, that's it's definitely something that some of these players are really happy about. Neeb especially, who has had that's been his kryptonite this year, is the Terrans, but none in his group to worry about. So as far as Frozen Temple goes, what do we see here that's super different? This isn't King Staging Station. The paths are going to work a bit differently. You can get to your opponent's main much more directly.
It's a little easier to be aggressive on this map, and it would be easier to go for one of those you know, timings that we mentioned before, Adepts and Archons and Immortals if you truly want to. Of course, it's hard to attract through the middle. Dia cancelled his shade there, by the way, which I think is good news for ShoWTimE, because ShoWTimE's opening is a tiny bit different than what we normally see. We're very used to seeing either 2 Stalkers or 2 Adepts into 2 Stalkers. It's 4 Adepts this time for ShoWTimE, so I think it's really good news that Dia cancelled the shade and doesn't know about Adept number 3 and 4. And now I'm obviously very curious to see where ShoWTimE is going to take this, because normally you don't just make 4 Adepts to do nothing.
Yeah, he's waiting to see if those shades are going to go through. They did get canceled, so ShoWTimE's going to move forward. He's going to try to go for one of these Adepts of Deer. He will be able to pick off one. He does lose one of his own, the 2 Stalkers here, of course, able to do a reasonable amount of damage there, so he has 3 of his Adepts. Is he going to commit to the main base, though? No, he pulls back at just the last second. Of course, Photon Overcharge with those Stalkers should have been more than enough to make mincemeat of those Adepts.
Now, Twilight Council going down, Robotics Facility finishing up on both sides, but this does make me wonder, if you open up with 3 Adepts like this, I mean, there is a good chance he makes another fast Prism, and again, once more he will try to jump on these sentries. There are pylons, maybe on the left side of the sentries he could have gone for one, but he decides not to do it. It could be a very, very similar opening over here from ShoWTimE, where he's going to try to just go for the same move and jump on top of the sentries.
Yeah, the Prism is almost halfway done. Twilight Council is about to finish. Deer is going a bit more directly into the Immortal setup.
But this is nice already. I mean, this is kind of nice for ShoWTimE, as Dia waited quite some time before he decided to saturate his expand. He had a lot of probes in the main, but he felt he couldn't protect both mineral lines, so he decided to keep the probes in the main, which means that even though the worker count looked incredibly close, 32 against 31, it's actually a lot better for ShoWTimE, as ShoWTimE was already very comfortably mining up 2 bases, as we can see in the graphic.
Yeah, it had a slight edge in terms of the amount of income going between the 2 of these players. Nice new little tool.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks Blizzard for that one. That was in like the last patch.
Who's our man? Is it Coca or Funka?
I don't know. I don't know this game.
It doesn't even matter. Both Frenchies are always on the money, right?
Yeah, the French have taken over the observing. So we have these 3 Adepts looking in, and I mean, is this going to be the same story? Is it going to go for the probes or the sentries? That Prism is there for the hot pickup out, and it looks like it's going to be the sentries. One of them taken down very low. First one does get picked off, going for number 2. And there's the pickup. Still 1 sentry remains. 2 overcharges burned as well.
Will the Prism be able to get out of here, though? For now, it seems like it. The Adept's actually getting dropped in the main. That's nice. Is there more energy on this Mothership 4? Yes, there is. 1 more. But ShoWTimE doing a good job in avoiding that Photon Overcharge as well. And look at Deer. Deer just had enough. He's marching across the map. He wants to become aggressive with his 1 Immortal. Wow, this is kind of a crazy push. What does ShoWTimE have here? Not that much, but he has decent defensive warp in. 2nd Immortal on the way, Photon Overcharge. I think because he has 2 pylons here, he will be fine.
Yeah, this is going to be tough to stop. Another Overcharge is used in the main of Deer to get this Prism out of their base. Oh, good force field on the Immortal, but an even better pickup, of course. That's Warp Prism can grab from so far away.
Oh, Sentry was misrallied for Deer, and that Sentry died. So Deer only had a single Sentry here, and Guardian Shield would have been incredibly useful.
Blink's about to finish for ShoWTimE as well. To also help trying to move around some of these units. There's another Overcharge. Going to try to force field as much of these units in as possible. You have to do a lot of picking up to get these guys out of here. The 2 Immortals in the back. The Prism comes back with some of these Adepts to help hold for ShoWTimE.
And so far, I would say this is a very solid hold. Of course, Deer is not all in, and he's definitely applying some decent pressure here, but there's not too much he can do anymore. ShoWTime's setup is just very solid. He knows what he's up against. 4 more gateways for Deer.
That gives me on this?
Yeah, that gives me the idea that he's gonna go back, regroup, You know, let those shields regenerate a little bit, wait for resonating glaives, and then do the same thing all over again. So the next scout is going to be incredibly important for ShoWTimE. Well, ShoWTimE has Blink. He's going to try to blink below the prism, and he should be able to get it.
Yep, he's going to get right underneath. Shoots at his own Stalker, but the Adepts are going to start to unload. He's looking, and he's going to be able to get that prism on the way out just barely. Okay, there's the next Blink. He's able to grab it, and the Adepts are just going to go running around trying to escape.
I mean, it was kind of a clumsy pickup there because he shot at his own Stalker, made it harder to pick up the prism in the end.
Just run into these Adepts, though, so he's going to be able to grab at least one of them. Maybe the second one before the cooldown goes off.
But because of all of this, ShoWTimE is very, very occupied in dealing with it. Now, picking up the prism is awesome because if Deer wants to make an 8-gate attack, he needs another prism, which is on the production tab now. But because ShoWTimE was so busy in dealing with that prism, he does not know yet that Deer is still on 2 bases, and he doesn't know that Deer added 4 extra gates. Our German Protoss needs to identify what's happening.
Oh, you're right. His whole army's on the south side. It looks like he wants to make a push to cancel a 3rd base, but...
There isn't any.
Yeah, there's no 3rd base to cancel. This Adept doesn't see the army, but maybe he'll see that these rocks are going to get busted down if that's the approach that Deer wants to take. Doesn't want to go up a ramp. So ShoWTimE knows he just got vision of this, so the preparations are beginning. It looks like he just grabbed an Observer or something on the left side.
I mean, this is one of these pushes where Photon Overcharge is going to be incredibly important because, you know, Adepts are awful against Pylons, and Pylons have very high DPS, but Adepts are pretty much solid against everything else that ShoWTimE has. Is Deer going to let these Shades finish up? No, he will not. Instead, he's going to work on both Pylons, and he will get both Pylons and force a cancel.
Yeah, now ShoWTimE does have units to watch the 3rd base of Deer, so he knows all he has to do is stop this. He knows there's no 3rd base 100% now. He just has to defend, stay alive against this army, and play the best that he possibly can. The Adept Shades go forward. They do get canceled. Guardian Shield gets popped by Deer. ShoWTimE holding his Concave, keeping one of the Immortals on top of the ramp, trying to help deny a little bit of that vision. Force Field's in. A good few of the Adepts, though, clearing out about 4 or 5 of them right there.
But those were the last Photon Overcharges. Will the Shades from ShoWTimE be able to block the Shades of Deer? No, they will not. But Deer will cancel one more time. I mean, it's just hard to attack into a concave like this with Adepts, especially because of the way that Adepts attack. They don't have extremely big range. I think so far ShoWTimE's defense is pretty damn good.
Yep, he's been holding this door very well. There's the overcharge once more, peeling off a few more of these Adepts, and ShoWTimE continues to bolster his army. He still knows there's no 3rd for Deer. He has that Adept there. The War Prism is very close by. As soon as this attack is over, he can immediately get on the offensive, throws out a Disruptor shot, just gets a single Adept with it.
But Disruptors are so incredibly good against Adepts, so now Deer knows that his time is running out. If Deer wants to win this game, it has to happen right here and right now, but I think that the setup of ShoWTimE is just a little too good. Those Immortals are still super healthy. More good force fields going down.
And he focuses down the Immortal on top of the ramp. He's going to try to throw his Adepts at this Disruptor, who throws out another shot and clears another 2 Adepts out, it looks like, as a 2nd Disruptor is going to pop. And with this, only needs 1 good shot, and he could bring an end to this assault. Grabs the Immortal of Deer, and ShoWTimE continuing to blink back, holding on against a single Immortal left in this push for Deer that is unleashing most of the damage. 9 kills on this bad boy. ShoWTimE barely trying to hold, throws another Disruptor shot. The barrier soaks it up, and ShoWTimE barely trying to keep this attack back. Deer enters the main base. He's going to grab it. Looks like at least one of the Disruptors. The probes are coming off the line to try to help defend the Disruptors. He's going to throw the shot out. He might get his own probes. Just gets the Adept. The Immortal, barely any health left. It's so low. Throws one more shot, and he gets all 3 of the units. And ShoWTimE keeps his main base protected for now. Another Overcharge is going to come out to push these Adepts back to supplies. So close, Roddy.
It's just Adepts. I mean, Adepts incredibly good in killing against workers, but if ShoWTimE has enough time to just get a couple of Stalkers out, all he needs is like 4 or 5 Stalkers now, and he has these Disruptors, and the shots are good.
Shot out, gets 4 of the Adepts, clearing out a lot of the firepower of this army once again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Deer knows he's in a lot of trouble. The Disruptor count is getting high. 3 Disruptors is incredibly hard to pick off for just Adepts. So what do you do right now? Is Deer happy with the damage he did? He picked off a couple of workers, but he feels like, nope, I need to finish this game here.
Throws another shot out, gets a single Adept with those. He's pushing in towards this base, but if he goes in, he's going to eat those overcharges. There we go. He jumps on top. The Disruptor picks off half of the Adepts instantly, and Deer's push has been thwarted. GG, ShoWTimE takes the series.
Wow, what a sick game by ShoWTimE there. Game number 1 was awesome. I think game number 2 was great. Just shown how confident he is in PvP and shows his game understanding as well. He saw that army on the right top side and he's like, I don't need to defend my 3rd base. All I need to do is stay alive. Eventually I can go up to Disruptors. Eventually the power of the Adept will fade off, you know. All I need to do is just hang in there a little bit longer. I think it was a super mature call to just cancel that Nexus and sacrifice it and focus on defending. I loved it.
Fantastic decision making by ShoWTimE, and having the awareness to know that that third was not going up for Deer and saying, all I have to do is survive. What an awesome series out of ShoWTimE, advancing 2-0 over Deer. Guys, we're going to go to a short break. When we come back, we're going to hear from the man himself.
Welcome to BlizzCon!
This is one of the coolest things you're ever going to see in your life.
For Azeroth! We invented some brand new characters.
When we first did BlizzCon back in 2005, we had no idea what to expect.
Are we ready to begin the costume contest?
It's so much more than a game in a box. Have a great BlizzCon!
Of the storm. Prepare for Heroes Brawl, the new game mode that breaks all the rules. Rated T13.
This is a place of funk and magic, of phenomena. Anything goes for one night
See the full animated short at playoverwatch.com.
Interview we saw with ShoWTimE's parents prior to this match. They said they watch all of his games, and I'm sure they're absolutely ecstatic. Congratulations, ShoWTimE. Not only are you the first winner in this particular group, but you have a dominant-looking 2-0 victory over a Korean. And ShoWTimE, I actually speak with you a lot. This year, especially in 2016, I've done so many interviews with you, but this is the first time I'm speaking with you with a win over a Korean. So I'm just wondering, does it taste a little different?
A little bit, I would say. Like, I was a bit nervous going into the tournament because my overall play wasn't like super good the last month or so. So I wasn't like super confident against the Koreans, but I played a bit on ladder against them and I kind of realized they are not much better than me. So yeah, it feels a little different, yeah.
Well, after a dominant-looking game 1, game 2, there was a point where it did look like Deer could possibly break you. So I'm wondering what was going through your head?
Like, he did like the first push he did. I kind of held off well, like it didn't really do any damage and I was in a good position. But I didn't really have any scouting of what he was doing. And I was skipping my adept speed while he was going like lots of adepts and I kind of need the adept speed. So I gave up the third base. I was a bit worried I would die, but I had disruptors on the way and once I get them out, I'm in pretty good position. Like my control wasn't the best because my hands kind of didn't want to do what I wanted them to do, but yeah, I mean, I held on really closely.
Well, your next potential match will be either a Terran or a Zerg in Bjorn or Violet. Bjorn goes without being said, he's a recent GSL champion. Violet is actually a player that you played at Spring, at the Spring Championship, and you defeated him 3-0 in the quarterfinals. So I'm not going to ask you who you preferred to play, but overall, how are you feeling about this potential matchup between those two players?
I think Bjorn should be the big favorite. Like, I think he's a favorite for the tournament, and I'm not really sure about Violet's level, to be honest. I think he has been practicing on Korean ladder recently, so I don't really have any experience against him. But yeah, I think Bjorn should be the favorite, even for the whole tournament, and I think he will probably win too.
And was it hard for you to prepare coming into this tournament, knowing that you had all 3 races to look, potentially look forward to?
I think it's like good and bad at the same time because let's say you have like 3 Zergs in your group, you have to prepare like a lot of different builds. While if you have 1 race each, yeah, you have to practice against every matchup, but you only have to prepare like 3 builds, maybe a bit more if you have a rematch. But yeah, like it's good and bad, I guess.
And before I let you go, I'm just going to ask, how are you feeling overall just headed into this tournament? Yesterday, unfortunately, we did see Snoot come out, get eliminated, but you're looking really strong right now. So what are your sort of hopes moving forward?
Well, for me, it's like any other tournament. I go into it and I want to win. That's just how it is. I mean, maybe my chances aren't the best, but I don't really care. I just like try to be my best and get as far as possible, really.
All right, well, congratulations again, ShoWTimE. Definitely looking forward to your winners match coming up. And of course, we are going to head back to the boys, as I'm sure they have a lot to say about that series.
Thank you very much, Smix. ShoWTimE von Urtisheim, the WCS Circuit Summer Champion, that's where he's from, his village name, is the victor in the first match of the day. And a very solid, very impressive start to day 2.
I think everyone expected that, except for Artosis.
Yeah.
I kind of want to know.
Well, okay, here's the thing, right? Because being a human, I have this thing called pattern recognition. And having done StarCraft now for 18 years, I kind of grew used to the Koreans always being much better. But I almost can't believe it's real right now that, like, ShoWTimE just outplayed Deer. He played
in
better.
both
He's like, okay,
games.
my PvP is better than yours,
Weren't
and
you
now
the
I
one who
advance.
said you believe in miracles, though?
I do. And
You
I
sexy
guess
thing.
I'm being paid.
I'm excited.
I'm being paid off for that now because it's so weird to be alive in a time where the foreigners are like, oh, no, yeah, this guy's better than that Korean that got like 3 top 4s in GSL and is a champion. It's like,
You heard what he said
wow.
too, right, in the interview there, where he was just like, well, actually, you know, they're not that much better than me, and I think I can beat them. Like, that type of confidence, we just
that definitely just
haven't
happened.
Seen.
That it just happened. Like he just looked fantastic in the PvP. There was like nothing wrong with it. He was doing great harassment, great build orders. Like he had really smart moves backing off from that third base. I was like, oh wow, that's just the smartest thing you can do right now.
I want to get a little bit. I want to pull a Todd and get a little bit further ahead though, and I want to even talk about that's a caster.
Grand final.
I'm sorry. This was very impressive. He really came over the top and did outplay Deer in this series, and we can kind of see that right there. And like even in the Disruptor play back and forth, yes, he had shots landed against him. That's a given in Disruptor play, but he was just doing the smarter stuff with Disruptors, and he was just kind of slowly edging out and winning. He ends up losing this base, but it's like a smart loss, and we see that again in the next game. But I do want to get ahead of myself and talk about something real quick. On the subject of ShoWTimE being better or as good as Deer, I do think that there is a little bit of that, except in the PvT matchup in particular, but really with all the non-Koreans, them versus the Terrans. There's only 2 of them here, but I feel like if Beyond takes care of business against Violet and we see ShoWTimE versus Beyond, that to me is the test. Is he actually as good as these Koreans, or is it like PvP right now is really cool for us and PvZ's got some hope? Because the Terrans have always been the like, oh, no. You're actually still a grade below me. Absolutely.
There's a way higher density of top-end Terrans in Korea. You know, Europe only has, like, out of the top players, how many are Terrans? Just a small handful.
Yeah.
So definitely that is going to be, like, a big thing. Can ShoWTimE touch Beyond?
And they play very different as well. Like, if you look at Marilord and Thermal, and then you compare with, like, Maru and TY, they definitely have, like, different styles and stuff.
And then one thing, a note here, by the way, TLO doing a great job selecting these scenes. The coolest thing for me from this defense, yes, he got a concave, yes, he controlled, he was very patient, doing individual photon overcharges, like a very good defense, but what got us to this point was him scouting the lack of third for Deer and saying, you know what, our armies are comparable, could I hold this third? Maybe, but I'm up 1-0, and if I hold the all-in at my natural, I know that I win this game. And he makes that choice, sitting in those seats over there, fighting for an amazing, like the most amazing tournament. That's incredible. That's really good.
He actually made a really similar choice in the first game as well, right? He pulls back, and he's actually ahead in tech, and he's waiting for that to pay off. Like, he pulls back in that game and has disruptors, and that's what actually ends up holding for him. In the previous game, he pulls back, loses that 4th base, and suddenly he has Tempest out, and Deer's like, oh.
Same choice,
Doesn't it feel like the roles are reversed? Like, once upon a time, like, you would see a lot of Korean against foreigners matchup, and it would be like, the foreigners trying to be too aggressive and losing to the Korean that has got like perfect defense. Now the roles kind of
Deer's
reversed
all inning
here.
into ShoWTimE to then lose the series. You're exactly right. It's interesting, but like I said, to me this is really cool to see, and we've been getting this year, so I'm excited. But I do feel like it's the Terrans, and to even a little bit of lesser extent, but the Zergs. That's the test. If Neeb takes out like a Dark, or if you know somehow ShoWTimE edges out Beyond, then I'm like, it's real. The Koreans do have competition.
No, totally. Dark, Zest, TY, Beyond. If these guys start taking those 4 down, like, okay, there we have it. That's like, you are top of the world.
What do you think has started this? Is it confidence, self-belief, experience? I mean, over the last year, I'd like to say, from Legacy of the Void being released, I think all of the top Europeans have been very vocal about, wanting to play against the top Koreans, thinking they can beat the top Koreans. And then, you know, the last 12 months, it's really starting to shine through.
I think a big part of it, and this is going to sound like a paid advertisement, it kind of is because I'm paid by them to be here, but the WCS system is finally actually seeing some results. A big part of the reason why a Neeb, a ShoWTimE, these guys can stand up to them is experience on big stages fighting for something of value. It was always like we had really talented players. I think back to like an Idra. But what was one of Idra's biggest weaknesses? Well, when he got on that big stage, if he had confidence, he could seal the deal. But a lot of times he's like, nope, they're better than me, and he shut down. If he had a system like this that kind of constantly shoved him up against these guys and put him out there, that's a little bit of a bad example because he actually did face a lot of Koreans. But the point I'm trying to make is the more time they have on that stage, I feel like the more confidence they can have to do that. And for me, it's now starting to take shape because we've had a whole year of that going on.
The constant practice leading up to events that actually mean a lot and win you a lot of money, and then it's like you're just consistently motivated to play and practice, you know, at your fullest. And you know, I've definitely heard a lot of times from a lot of players in Europe that ShoWTimE is one of the hardest workers, and you can just completely see that paying off right now.
And I think there is an evolution of esport as well, where like, you know, once upon a time, nobody ever would have really gone to Korea except maybe like, you know, Elki and Guillaume and these guys. Whereas now it's like almost like standard. You hear like these players going to Korea and you're like, well, I guess, yeah, right, he wants to get better. But now everybody has gotten better. Even like if you have to compare it to traditional sports, people that compare the athletes of today to the ones of the past, or even like in mathematics, most people will agree that the ones of today, just because a lot of stuff has been discovered already, they would be better. It's the same in video games, in my opinion. Like the good ways to practice, to get better, to compete with guys that are considered better, they've just gone better really at everything. So it's the case, I think, here. I think too for ShoWTimE. He practices very effectively.
Well, that's the first match of Group C done then, which means we can get ready for the second one. Quite excited about this, as Bjorn, as you can see behind me, is now setting up on the stage the one-man army going up against Violet very, very shortly. Maybe it's just me who's excited about this. Maybe you guys at home as well can join in. We are going to go to a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll be going into that match. It's going to be Bjorn versus Violet.
Yeah.